Mm. Okay. Mm. Mm. Hasipa, while we're waiting for people to come in, um, shall I share my screen? Well, let me close the door in the meantime. So that you...
Hi, Sue. Yes. And I think because we'll be having people that are joining us online as well, perhaps we can start because we are already live streaming on YouTube. Good day, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us today. It appears that at Rhodes University, because this has been their first week back, there has been a lot of clashes with meetings, so we received a lot of emails from people asking for the recordings since they are unable to attend because of classes and supervision meeting. But if you are a postgraduate at Rhodes University who went on recess, would like to welcome you back, and we hope that you had a lovely rest, or actually you were productive with your research. So as we're opening our second term engagements, please note that this is our first workshop, and also the fact that tomorrow's workshop will be an online YouTube pre-recorded workshop, and the link is in the email that we shared through our advertisement. So please go through it. It's actually great, especially when you are in the process of applying for ethics, because you will learn how to navigate the website as well as just hear about other questions that other people have heard in the past. But the most important thing is that once you've watched the video tomorrow, if you have any questions, do email them to me, and we will email the facilitators. They were not available to facilitate the discussion tomorrow. Today, we are learning about the things to do in 2024 as you are preparing to apply for funding for 2025. And joining us today is Sue McKenna, who has worked in so many panels and said in so many panels when it comes to funding, as well as who have written so many references for people who want to apply for funding. But all those things happen according to different timelines, and it is very fitting and important for us to have this conversation now so as to prepare the postgraduate students who want to apply for 2025 funding. Without wasting any time, thank you very much, Sue, for agreeing to facilitate this workshop for us. And I am also looking forward to hearing more about the things that one needs to do for postgraduate funding. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Asipe, and welcome to everyone who's with us this afternoon. Having shown my face that I am a real person, I will now turn off my camera. This afternoon's session should be fairly quick. I really have, it says there are 5 things to do, and I really am going to just suggest 5 things to you. I'm hoping that I'll be done within 20 minutes, I would say. So these are sort of suggestions of ways to think and ways to act and things to do as you do some forward thinking. But I'm hoping that then if you have got questions or comments, put them in the chat, put up your hand, interrupt me, or we'll have time for discussion afterwards. Because if I am unable to answer your question with regards to postgraduate funding, I will, at least between Asipe and I, we will make sure that we point you in the right direction. So, you know, as I said, it's just going to be a short presentation. But the focus of the presentation is about planning ahead, and it is this reality that most of you, being human beings, are busy with what you have to do today, with what deadline you have for Friday, with what you have to do by next week. And inevitably, you're so busy with all the immediate deadlines, it's really hard to do long-term thinking. But it's really important, and that's, I think, just generally in life, to pause in your busy day-to-day getting through the next hurdle and to think about, where am I? Where am I going? What do I want? And I think that really does require a kind of quiet, meditative space to think what you want and to plan for it. Inevitably, because of the busyness of everyday life, things just come at us. And so I often come across students who want in November or December, they say, oh, I need funding for next year. Or even worse, January or February, they'll say, oh, I've got no funding for this year. And that really is unfortunately too late. Not only is it too late because the deadlines have all closed from the various funding instruments, but because the kinds of things that you need to put in place, what I'm going to suggest today, to get good funding, you actually need to prepare a year in advance and to kind of keep it in the back of your mind throughout. So I'm going to be sort of giving you 5 things that you need to be doing, but a lot of them, it's about thinking through what it is that you want and giving yourself time for that kind of reflection, even though you're probably thinking, yeah, but I'm busy with my master's right now. I can't possibly think about a PhD, or I'm busy with my honors. I can't possibly think about my master's. I'm too busy in the moment. And it's wonderful that you're in the moment, but actually you do need to make space for that reflection, for forward thinking. And the first one, the worst one, right? Marks. Most funding instruments, whether it's the National Research Foundation, the Medical Research Grant, whether it's international funding, whether it's institutional funding, almost all of them, the number one criteria are your marks. So, for example, at NRF, to get an NRF grant, you need to have at least 65% for your 3rd year to get an honors, for your honors to get a master's, for your master's to get a PhD grant. And 65 is the bottom mark. You can't even apply if you haven't got 65%. And then obviously, if they've got 500 applicants and they've only got funding for 100 people, they are going to look at your marks. So you, unfortunately, that is definitely a priority, but it's not too late. Building a strong mark, a strong final assessment mark, if you're working on that now in April, towards the end of this year, towards getting good marks at the end of this year, you can still do it. It is not too late, but it might mean really rethinking how you're spending your time at the moment. Obviously, you're having a great time, we hope. You're making friends, we hope. You're having social encounters, we hope. But in the end, are you dedicating the time that you need to be doing to reading, writing? The thing about postgraduate studies is it's often kind of open-ended, unlike an undergraduate where you know what day the lectures are on, when you know when your tutorials are, when you know when your assignments are due. At postgraduate level, especially master's and PhD level, it's kind of, unless, there might be some time, oh, you've got a supervision meeting or you've got to go into the laboratory to do certain work. But most of it is kind of up to you to schedule your own time. And a lot of it is open-ended, where you're not even sure if you're spending your time wisely. I'm sitting in the library and I'm reading and I'm thinking and I'm scribbling lots of notes, but am I even going anywhere? The answer is yes. If you are reading on your topic, if you are writing on your topic, you are going in the right direction. Even if most of that reading, you're not really sure that you've understood it, even if almost all of that writing is scribbled, incomprehensible, confused notes for yourself, it's ABC, right? Apply your butt to the chair. Reading and writing will lead to better submissions of academic writing, to more coherent arguments, to better marks. So really, it takes so much self-discipline, but a lot of your time is open-ended. It's up to you how you spend that time. And sometimes, even if you are spending it sitting in the library, doing the reading, doing the scribbled writing, you might feel, I'm not going anywhere. Rest assured, trust the process you are. If you are dedicating regular, and I mean daily, time to reading and writing, you will move forward and it will show in the marks. You need to plan your year to get your good marks. figure out what are your deadlines, what are your time frames. Some might be set for you through the structure of your course, some might be set for you by your supervisor, but to a large extent, they're also set for yourself. Draw up a calendar, stick it up on a wall, figure out where you're going to get the time that you need to meet your own deadlines. Make sure that you meet with your lecturer or supervisor regularly. Again, so much of this rests on your own self-discipline and your own agency. You need to advocate for yourself, to have those meetings, to get support. You know, the CPGS offers writing retreats, and it offers writing groups where you can meet with a group of peers and once a week or once every 2 weeks, talk about your writing, talk about your work. It's seeking out those support networks that are going to help you. So the number one thing to do this year to improve your chances of getting funding next year is to focus on your current studies and to really set yourself that self-discipline of doing as well as you can. ABC, apply your butt to the chair and get on with the reading and writing. And if you really are feeling lost, look for help. Don't suffer in silence. The second thing that you can do this year to help you get funding next year is to look at how else you can augment your desirability to a funder through things beyond the focus and emphasis on your own studies to improve your marks. And depending on what funding you're applying to, some funders are really interested in, have you done community service? Have you been involved in any community engagement projects? Are you on a sports team? Do you run a chess club? And have you got any other short courses that you are completing that show that you have looked for opportunities to better yourself and to serve others? Now, some organizations don't really care about this stuff, but many of them do. And even those that don't explicitly call for this, you can, in your application, speak about the fact that, oh, I'm involved in this community engagement opportunity, or I am in this, team of soccer, or I've done a short course through the CPGS on African feminisms or on the use of the software R or whatever it might be. Because in a very competitive environment, you kind of need to show that you are a very desirable person for people to invest in. The number one priority for them is generally going to be marks, but it's also going to be, for many of them, an evidence of being a well-rounded person. So how can you show that you are really someone that is worth investing in? And the sports issue, you can include reference to your sporting engagements in your CV, just to show that you are this well-rounded person. But you can, if you are very into your sports, you can also look for sports bursaries, especially if you are considering going to the US. But certainly you would need to be not just the average social sports athlete, you would need to be sort of top of your game. So look for opportunities to extend yourself. And this can be, as I say, CPGS offers accredited short courses. Rhodes University Community Engagement offers all sorts of opportunities to go and do tutoring, to be involved in various projects. And all of these things can just show that you are, let's say, the kind of person that does stuff, that gets out there and makes a difference. And that can definitely make you attractive to funders. Conference presentation. If you have not given a conference presentation, you really, really, really should do so. And that can include the postgraduate conference that we have at Rhodes University on the 13th and 14th of September this year. And even if you're applying before that, you can include that and say, I am presenting at that conference. We also run, the CPGS also runs a 3-minute thesis competition. These are things that build your CV, that show that you're not only getting good marks doing the work, but you're disseminating it in various ways. Now, some of you might even have publications. That's fantastic. Funders really like to see that you've got publications, whether those are formal academic publications or even news articles. It shows that you're good at not only doing the research, but disseminating them. So obviously that is a fantastic thing to build your CV, is to get a publication. But for many of you, particularly at third year honors, level, master's level, you probably don't have a publication, but you can get a conference presentation. So for example, the NRF have literally tens of thousands of applicants for every bursary, every scholarship they offer. And yet, they're only funding like 5% of people who apply. So they have various systems to sort of get, how can I say this without sounding cruel, to get rid, they've got to work through these piles of applications, and they need to whittle them down quite quickly. And one of the ways they do that is they have this grid of points. So the first column will be for your marks. Did you get over 65%? If it's no, you're already out. Your application gets tossed aside. If it's yes, then you get a point. If it's 65 to 75, I think it's 65 to 70, you get a point. 70 to 75, you get 2 points. 75 to 80, you get, I think, 3 points. Anything above 80, you get 4 points, something like that. So that's one way of just quickly classifying. But they also have this column for conference presentation or publications. And if it's no, you get naught. If your CV or your application shows no, I've never, if you don't show that you've had a conference presentation or a publication, you will get naught for that. If you can show that you've got a conference presentation, you will get a mark for that. As far as I can remember, it's actually just naught or one for that. It might be able to get 2 if you've done a lot of things, or but as far as I remember, it's either naught because you haven't, or 1 if you have. So a nice, easy way, really, to get an extra point. But even if you're not applying for the NRF and you're applying to some other funding body that might have its own system, definitely having on your CV that you've presented your work and possibly even published your work really counts. So speak to your supervisor. There might be conferences that you can go to. But as I say, there is this conference right here at Rhodes University every year, and all of you can present at that one, even if you're off campus. There is an online possibility, and so it would be foolish to get a naught for that, and it really can boost your chances of getting funding. Then, of course, you do need to find out where you're going to apply for. And so it takes work to find these funding sources. The more common ones, well-known ones like the NRF, everyone applies to, and I'm not saying you shouldn't apply to them, you definitely should, but there are often other ones that maybe most people haven't heard about. So do keep searching. Give yourself time every couple of weeks, maybe when you're sort of feeling overwhelmed by your studies and you need a break. Instead of having a break by going off to Netflix or going and having a drink with your friends, why don't you have a break by saying, okay, I'm going to give myself an hour or two to just do some Google searching, and maybe keep an Excel spreadsheet or a Word document where you start to pull together all these options and tell your friends about them. Sharing is caring. One thing is, of course, to go to university websites, and those don't only have to be South African websites, those can be international university websites, and look for their funding webpage. Make sure that you're on the postgraduate funding mailing list at Rhodes University, where you'll be told about possible options that come up. And then there are all sorts of other websites that you can go to. The DHET, that third on the list there, the Department of Higher Education and Training in South Africa offers a number of international scholarships where that's only open to South African citizens. South African citizens can go and do their masters or PhDs in various countries around the world. Fundi Connect bursaries, GoStudy.net sometimes has bursaries, the Scholars for Development sometimes has bursaries. And then those last 3 are websites that are not always kept very up to date, but sometimes they are: ZA Bursaries, All Bursaries, and SA Base. And those are just a few suggestions. Then there are other big funders that you should maybe look at, like the EU Erasmus Plus, the EU Erasmus Plus. In America, they've got, let me try and think off the top of my head. I can't think of the name of the big American scholarship. DARD is the big German one. Unfortunately, these things take time. I often find you go on the website and I just feel overwhelmed because I'm not sure, is this for South African citizens or does this have to be for anyone? And you have to spend a long time trawling through this thing. That's why I suggest that you keep an Excel spreadsheet or a Word document where you make your own little notes, even of ones that you definitely can't apply for because you don't meet the criteria, so you don't waste time looking at them again. So I would advise you to keep looking. Importantly, when you found any, there's another workshop that we will run on how to apply for scholarships. So I'm not talking about that now. But when we do talk about that one, I speak about the need to really read the small print of each scholarship you're applying for, each bursary you're applying for, because you don't just throw the same application to all the different funders, craft it to their agenda. Funders often spend a lot of time thinking about who they want to give their money to. When you submit your application, whether it's through an online form or whether it's through a CV or whether it's through a whole proposal, whatever it might be, make sure that you frame who you are and what you want to do in ways that clearly use the language of the funders. That you make it very, very clear to them that you are the person that they should give their money to. So you do need to, as I say, spend time looking at what's out there. But when you identify someone that you're actually going to apply to, spend even more time really looking at who they want and use their language from their website or from their call for applications. Use their actual language in your application to show them that you are the very person they're looking for. Number 5, take time to think about what you want. Often I think, as I said earlier, we're so busy with our day-to-day, we don't think ahead. And especially in terms of funding, you do have to think ahead. You've got to start thinking now about what you need to put in place in your life to make it likely that you could get funding next year. I also don't think we spend enough time just thinking what we want out of life. Now, we don't have complete control over what happens to us. We are at the mercy of all sorts of things that just, circumstances that just happen to us. But we do have some agency. And so rather than just being swayed by whatever comes along, I think it's really worth spending some time thinking through who you want to be. What do you want in life? Do you want to study further? Why do you want to study further? What is it that you're passionate about? How do you imagine yourself in 5 years' time? Take time to reflect on these issues, because I think the students that really have a strong sense of who they are and what they are and what they want actually find it easier to identify the scholarships that they're a good fit for, and they find it easier to craft a convincing application. So, rather than sort of desperately applying everywhere, which is understandable given how scarce funding is, I still think it's really worth spending time thinking, who am I now and who do I want to be? What kind of person? What are my strengths? And where are my weak areas that I need to build on? And how can I craft the life that I'm hoping for? What are the attributes that I need to nurture in myself? What are the skills I need to seek out? And have these conversations with other people. Have these conversations about who you are and where you want to go with your mentors, with your supervisors. If you have a good relationship with your supervisor, they might be the exact person that can help you in thinking through these issues. With your priest, with your older sister, with your mother, with whoever it is that you respect and you know that they respect you. Have this conversation with them about, this is where I think I want to go with my life. And this is what I think I need to do to get there. and they can give you advice. You don't have to take their advice, but I think we don't make the time to reflect on who we are and where we want to go. And another reason why this is important to discuss this with your mentors is that most funders need references. And often people are applying at the last minute and they're cobbling together something which is not ideal, but especially not ideal because almost all funders will ask you for the names of references. Some will actually ask you for reference letters to be attached, and that takes time to get those letters. But most, the funders themselves will confidentially approach your funders so that your referees, so that your referees reply directly to the funders and you never get to see what they say. So that's most funders do that to keep it confidential. So when you're thinking about who you are and where you want to go, if that would include getting a scholarship, think about who could best speak to your skills and your attributes. And unfortunately, it can't be a family member. You want to have someone who looks credible, that the funders will say, yes, this is someone I can listen to, and that will give me a true picture of this person's skills. So having a conversation with your mentors about where you're hoping to go with your life and what you're putting in place to get there can include having a conversation with them about whether they can be referees for you. Just to go back to my earlier comment about the scoring system that the NRF uses, and many other funders use similar systems, where I said, the main score is around your marks, but they also give a score for if you've done a conference presentation. Some give a score if you've got additional short courses or community engagement, or you're involved in sports. Almost all of them will have a score for your references. And this is a very sad reality, but I've sat on committees where a number of people's applications for funding don't even get looked at because the references didn't come in time. And that seems awfully unfair to me, that your referees have let you down and you might not even be aware of it because the referees send in the references directly. They'll get an email from the funding to say that your application's been received and they've been identified by you as a potential referee, and please can they send in their letter. And if they don't, possibly your application won't even be looked at. So that is very unfair. Some systems you can see whether the referees have submitted, and so at least you'll know whether to nag them. Others, they won't. So I would strongly recommend that A, your referees know that you're putting down their name. B, when you actually submit the application, that you drop another email to your referees and say, just to let you know, I've submitted for this application, this scholarship, and put you down as a referee. Thank you again. And then maybe 2 days before the deadline, if you can't see whether they've submitted it or not, 2 days before the deadline, say, so sorry to bug you. I'm sure you've already done it, but just a reminder that the closing date is the day after tomorrow. So if you haven't sent in the reference yet, please do so. Because unfortunately, as I say, and I think it's very unfair, but if you've got referees who let you down because they didn't get round to it, sometimes your application won't even be considered. So there you have it. Very quickly, 5 things that you can do right now. Think about how you're going to enhance your marks. Think about how you're going to build your CV through extracurricular activities and through conference presentations. Start doing searches now and build up your skills in identifying potential funders. And spend a bit of time on introspection, thinking about what you want and who you want to be and what you need to put in place to become that person. Thanks, everyone, for listening. And let's hear if anyone has any questions or comments. I said I'd take 20 minutes. I see I've taken half an hour, but still short and sweet. While you are thinking of your questions, and I do hope that people will ask whatever you want to, please just note that in the chat, there is a link to an evaluation. We have a link for an evaluation for every workshop that CPGS offers. It's a way for us to get feedback from people about the actual workshop, but it's also a space where you can tell us what you want in the future. And there might be a specific issue, topic, anything to do with research design, with methodology, with being a student, with being a postgraduate. We will definitely do our best to address your needs. Hope has asked, will the YouTube video be uploaded? I'm not sure. Let me ask my lovely colleagues, Asipe and Olwetu, about the YouTube video for this session. I suspect that it's actually already there because I think they're doing live streaming, which means that it'll already be on YouTube. Okay, a CPAIR has asked, for the ones that ask you for a CV, what kind of CV does one prepare? These days, most funding applications that I'm aware of actually have sort of, how can you say, boxes that you fill in. So they'll literally ask you, what is your highest qualification? Where did you get it from? When did you get it? Or, have you got any conference presentations? Fill it in. So rather than uploading a full CV, you just answer their questions. But others will indeed ask for a CV. Make sure that you read all the requirements for each scholarship, because you might need to rearrange your CV to address the kind of person that they have made clear they want to fund. So if, for example, they talk a lot about wanting to fund people who are responsible, who care about social justice, who are committed to working with communities, well, then you need to really, have your community engagement activities, not just as a bullet, but actually really unpack it and explain what that community engagement is. So, you'll spend more energy in your CV explaining and unpacking and discussing and celebrating and highlighting the things that are pertinent to that particular scholarship. So your CV probably won't change from funding application to funding application, but the priority or the emphasis might change slightly. It's very important that you stick to their word length or page length. A lot of these funders, because they have so many applicants, they say your CV can only be 2 pages. So don't submit 8 pages, because there will be what's called a desktop rejection. You won't make it through the first administration where the administrator goes through and makes sure that you've met all the criteria. You won't even be looked at by the people who do the actual scoring if you don't meet the basic requirements. So, so I think, most of them, it's quite a short CV. It's your qualifications, it's your work experience, it's your presentations if you've done any, or publications if you have any. It's your extracurricular activities, it's any awards you've had, any prior funding is a really good thing to include as well. I used to think, I don't want to show that I've had money before, because then they might say, let's give it to someone else. But the opposite is true. If you've shown that you've in the past been awarded funding for your honors, for example, or a scholarship for your master's, and now you're applying for a PhD, it gives them the sense that, this is someone that, has already been vetted and seen to be worth investing in. The question about the references, thanks to Dozile. It needs to be someone, the references are someone who can speak to you. So you want someone that you know is going to say nice things about you, but you also want someone who knows you well. It can't be a family member. It probably shouldn't be someone like your pastor at church, although they might know you very well and be able to speak very well to you. And if they want 4 or 5 references and you can't think of anyone else, then maybe that is a good reference. But by and large, you want someone who can speak to the thing you're applying for funding for, which is, in the case of today's example, a postgraduate scholarship. So who can speak to your attributes and your skills and your capabilities around postgraduate research? Typically, that would be your current supervisor or a prior supervisor, or a lecturer, even in your undergraduate years, that you know well. As Asipa said earlier, I write a lot of references. I don't write references for people I don't know well enough, or people, who I last had contact with. Often people email me and say, "Can I put you down as a reference?" And for something, and I think, I don't even remember who this person is, and it turns out that I taught them in a short course 15 years ago. Then I will generally say, I don't think I'm your best person, because I'll have to say in my reference letter that I haven't had contact with you for 15 years. So academic references are probably the strongest. You could go as far back as a school principal if you really excelled, and if you stay in touch with the school, if you still do work with that school. But if you haven't, I wouldn't suggest that that's a good reference. Workplace, if you are employed, it could be someone you work with, but only in so much as they're able to say that you're a highly competent person who should get this scholarship. It's a bit different if you're applying for a job. If you're applying for a job, workplace references are really good, because they show that hopefully these are people who can say, hey, employ this guy, he's reliable, he's good, he's reliant, he gets on with the job, whatever. But typically for a postgraduate scholarship, if you can get academic references, that would be better. Workplace references is probably second best. Then you ask how many, 3 or more. Normally they'll tell you how many. And if they say up to 4 references, then include 4 references. If they say up to 5 references, include 5 references, because of what I said earlier, that maybe 1 or 2 of the people won't submit references. And most of these places will only consider your application if they have at least 2 references in hand. So if you've put down 4 references and only 2 actually submitted, at least your application will go through. But many will only ask you for 2 references or 3 references. So just follow the rules of what they say. If they don't say how many, I would suggest 3 or 4. If they don't tell you, if they just say, please include references, I would say 3 is great. 4 is even better if you can think of 4 really good references that are people that can speak to your capabilities. Any other questions? Hope your question about the ERAS application process, that video is already up on YouTube. And if you have a look for your latest email from CPGS, I think the link is in that. Otherwise, I think Asipa will probably send it out again tomorrow. Any other questions or comments? Besides funding for previous studies, what other kind of awards? Yes, I think if you have any awards, put them on your CV. So if you've made it onto the Dean's List, or you've got half colors or full colors for academics, brilliant. The further you are away from school, the less important the schooling is. So if you were applying for undergraduate, your school stuff's important. If you're applying for honors, your school stuff's still a little bit important, but less important. By the time you're applying for PhD, on your CV, if there's space, you can say, captain of the chess team, half colors for academics, sure, include that. But if you're short of space, you want to really focus on the more recent stuff. For example, on my CV, okay, I'm really old, but I wouldn't even mention my schooling at all. But if you've got awards, definitely put your awards on. And if those awards really speak, like the Community Engagement Award, if this is a funder that says we're looking to fund people that have a commitment to social justice, then don't just put the name of the award, but underneath it explain this award was given for my commitment to whatever, or my involvement in this project or whatever. So actually explain what the award is for. Okay, everybody. Hopefully something in there was helpful. Mostly, I hope that it's just given you the confidence to realize that you do have some agency to plan your life and to think through who you want to be in 5 years' time. And unfortunately, life is full of circumstances that are unexpected and failures along the way. Don't let those get you down. Keep your eye on where you are going. But that takes time to reflect on where you are now and where you want to be and who you want to be. And I hope that that is helpful to you. And I wish you all bountiful amounts of money to help you continue with your studies. Thank you for your time, everyone. Bye.